welcome back. We're at part 4 for manage applicants. Last time, the last thing that we talked about is we selected this particular application and we moved him from the global applicants group to the local applicants group. So right now we're manage local applicants, and you can see that this application is there. And even though this person had these two tasks checked off in global applicants, those were different task types. And so when we moved them to local applicants, obviously these task types are not going to be checked. So let me select this submission again. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move him to the back to the global applicants. And let's see what happens. Again, it processes, and if I go to global applicants, let's see what's going to happen here. So we go back, and once this page loads, we're going to basically see that same application loaded in this screen. And what do you know? The two tasks that he get completed before are still completed, because if he was part of this group, I mean, he would be assigned these tasks and then those would be checked. So that's something to consider. Typically, you will very rarely want to move one application from one group to another. It's generally not a good idea, and sometimes you may want to ask your account manager and support at myreviewroom.com whether or not you should proceed with that if you think that it's necessary, but generally speaking, I would avoid it most times. There are some cases where it might be useful. So let's say if someone just applied to a group and then they realize that, well, they made a mistake and they should have applied to a different group, but they haven't completed any tasks yet, you know, that's one case where it makes sense. All right, so let's select this application, and I'll show you a couple of more things. Now over here it says task actions. What are these? So depending on what type of tasks you have in your review room, there will be different options here. Now one of them is submit your application. So if we take a look at this, you see that this application is currently submitted. Now there are two situations usually when an application when an applicant will be prevented from editing their own application. You know, one case is if the person moves to the next round. So let me explain that. So if you're in the first round and you finish, you know, 3 tasks that you had in your first round, and then you press the submit button and you move to the next round, then basically your application, you know, no longer has access to those tasks. That's a default setting. It can be changed, but that's a default setting, right? So if this person called us up and said, well, you know, I made a mistake, you know, can you please let me edit my application again? So what do we need to do in that particular case? In that case, what I'll do first is I'm going to go to Task Actions, and I'm going to mark this application as incomplete. And essentially, that's going to unsubmit the application because, you know, the person's not done yet, right? So you'll see the submit task reverts back to no, and the status is active, and it changed from active submitted. Now the second part, right? So I can select this application. Let's move him back to the application round, because that's the round where those tasks were, and that's what he wants to edit. So if we move him back, all right, now he's back and he can do all these things. All right. So there's a few more things. So if you select an application and go to other actions, there are a few things that you can do. You can archive applications, delete them, activate them, lock them, unlock them, unsubmit them, you know, mark them as private and public. And, you know, the private and public stuff, that's mostly when we talk about private and public competitions. You know, that's something that we'll talk about in a different tutorial, but just keep that in mind that you can make something public or private upon viewing it here. The unsubmit button, it's similar to what we've just seen. Lock and unlock. Essentially, if you lock an application, that person will not be able to modify their title. And I'll explain what that is in a bit more detail. But let's start with the basics, right? Let's start with archiving an application. So when would you archive an application? So let's say that you had your review room running last year, and as soon as it was done running, you came back and, you know, you want to run a new application process for the future year. So first thing you want to do is you want to come in, select all your applications, and archive them. So what happens? Let me archive this application. So first of all, when you archive it, the applicant won't be able to access it, but you won't be able to see it either, so it's not going to clutter your view, but it's still there if you wanted to check it out. And if you wanted to check it out, well, how do you do that? Click on Show Filters on the right-hand side. Right now we're only seeing active applications, but if I change this and I went to archived applications and press apply, then essentially I'm going to see my archived applications. And if I want something back, I'm just going to select it, go to other applications, and then basically say activate selected submissions. Basically what that's going to do is it's going to unarchive it, and then I remove this filter and then apply, and I can see it again.